Animation is often thought of as safe, colorful, and innocent. But what if some animated films weren't made for children at all? What if beneath the bright colors lurked shadows of fear, satire, or a surreal darkness? Today we journey through the strangest corners of cinema history to uncover 15 animated movies that were far too adult for kids. 1. Fritz the Cat, 1972. When Ralph Bakshi unleashed Fritz the Cat in 1972, the world of animation was never the same again. Based on Robert Crumb's underground comics, this wasn't the Saturday morning fare audiences were used to. It was an animated satire filled with social rebellion, drug references, and biting political commentary. Released with an X rating, it quickly became infamous as the first animated feature labeled adults only. Critics were polarized. Some hailed it as bold counterculture art, while others dismissed it as offensive and vulgar. Behind the scenes, Crumb himself disowned the adaptation, claiming it betrayed the spirit of his creation. Still, audiences couldn't resist curiosity. It became a box office hit, raking in millions and proving animation could compete with live action in the adult market. Yet, the legacy of Fritz the Cat is complex. For some, it signaled liberation, an animated film daring to talk about race, politics, and social tension. For others, it was a reminder that cartoons could corrupt innocence. In the end, it shattered the illusion that animation was only for children, opening the door to a darker, stranger realm. 2. Heavy Metal, 1981. When Heavy Metal landed in theaters, it was like nothing audiences had ever seen. A kaleidoscope of violent fantasy, surreal sci-fi, and psychedelic rock, this Canadian cult film embraced everything parents feared their kids might stumble upon. Its anthology format, mixing space adventures, barbarian battles, and apocalyptic visions, was drenched in sex, gore, and heavy guitar riffs. Critics dismissed it as juvenile excess, but for its devoted fans, Heavy Metal was rebellion incarnate. The production itself was chaotic, with dozens of artists working on separate stories, giving the movie a fractured yet mesmerizing style. Soundtrack rights issues later made it nearly impossible to release on home video, fueling its mystique for decades. While kids in the 1980s were busy watching The Smurfs or Transformers, teenagers snuck into midnight screenings of Heavy Metal, mesmerized by its dangerous edge. Today it's hailed as both trash and treasure, a surreal time capsule of an era when animation dared to embrace chaos. Its legacy lives on, whispered about like a secret club you were never supposed to join. 3. Watership Down, 1978. At first glance, Watership Down looks like a gentle story about rabbits, but appearances deceive. Adapted from Richard Adams's beloved novel, this British animated feature shocked audiences with its unflinching violence and haunting themes. What many expected to be a children's fable quickly spiraled into a meditation on death, tyranny, and survival. Parents were horrified as young viewers witnessed scenes of rabbits being ripped apart, suffocated, or hunted. The bloodshed was graphic for its time, sparking complaints and even triggering calls for stricter rating systems. Yet, beneath the violence lay a deeper truth. Watership Down treated children as capable of facing harsh realities, showing nature as it is, brutal and unforgiving. Behind the scenes, director Martin Rosen insisted on faithfulness to the novel's tone, even if it meant alienating family audiences. Critics praised its courage, calling it one of the most important animated films ever made. Over time, it gained a cult following, remembered as a movie that scarred a generation while teaching timeless lessons about freedom and sacrifice. In the end, Watership Down proved that animation could be poetry carved from pain. It was never meant for the nursery. It was a battlefield painted with fur and blood. 4. Fantastic Planet, 1973. Few animated films feel as otherworldly or as unsettling as René Laloux's Fantastic Planet. This French-Czech collaboration was born in the shadows of Cold War Europe, and its haunting surrealism reflects that era's unease. The story follows humans called Oms, enslaved by towering blue aliens known as Drogs. On paper, it reads like a science fiction adventure. On screen, it becomes an allegory of oppression, colonization, and rebellion. What startled audiences wasn't just the plot, but the animation itself. Hand-drawn, cut-out figures floated across eerie, dreamlike backdrops, creating a visual style more like a fever dream than a traditional cartoon. Critics praised its daring artistry, but many parents mistakenly brought children, expecting a whimsical adventure. Instead, kids were met with scenes of strangulation, starvation, and existential dread. The production was a struggle. Lalou and his Czech team worked under tight budgets and political scrutiny, crafting the film frame by painstaking frame. Yet, the result was mesmerizing. When Fantastic Planet premiered at Cannes, it won the Special Jury Prize, instantly securing its place as one of animation's great experiments. Its legacy is undeniable. Musicians, filmmakers, and visual artists still draw inspiration from its haunting landscapes. For viewers, though, the message lingers longer than the imagery, that freedom is fragile and power, whether alien or human, can crush the spirit. For children, it was a nightmare. For adults, it was a revelation. 5. When the Wind Blows, 1986. On the surface, When the Wind Blows tells the gentle story of Jim and Hilda, an elderly British couple living through the threat of nuclear war. Animated with tender watercolor textures, it might appear to be a quiet family tale. But what unfolds is one of the most harrowing depictions of nuclear fallout ever put to film. Adapted from Raymond Brigue's graphic novel, the movie shows Jim and Hilda's naive belief in government safety pamphlets. After a nuclear bomb detonates nearby, their innocence crumbles. Their slow decline into radiation sickness, hair loss, confusion, frailty, is portrayed in heartbreaking detail. The juxtaposition of cozy domesticity with the horrors of atomic destruction stunned audiences. Behind the scenes, producers knew they were walking a dangerous line. The animation's softness was deliberate, meant to lull viewers into false comfort before shattering it with brutal realism. The soundtrack, featuring David Bowie's haunting theme, only deepened the despair. Many expected a political polemic, but instead they got something more chilling. A deeply personal story of love and helplessness in the face of annihilation. For children, it was unwatchable. For adults, it was unforgettable. Today, When the Wind Blows stands as both an anti-nuclear warning and a sobering reminder of human fragility. It left viewers shaken, realizing that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't aliens or villains, but the consequences of our own actions. 6. The Plague Dogs, 1982. If Watership Down scarred a generation, director Martin Rosen wasn't finished. Just a few years later, he delivered The Plague Dogs, another devastating animated tale, this time about two dogs, Snitter and Rauef, who escape from a brutal animal testing laboratory. What follows is not a story of triumph, but of fear, mistrust, and the haunting cruelty of humanity. Unlike the gentle watercolor tones of Disney, Rosen's world is bleak and merciless. The dogs, traumatized and desperate, wander through the English countryside, pursued by hunters, soldiers, and even their own nightmares. Scenes of vivisection, starvation, and suffering shocked audiences. Children who stumbled upon it expecting a dog cartoon were traumatized. Parents were horrified by its graphic despair. The film's production was grueling. Animators wrestled with the challenge of depicting realism without losing emotional weight. Unlike sanitized cartoons, every movement felt authentic, every shiver, every whimper. Critics were split. Some hailed it as one of the bravest anti-animal cruelty films ever made. Others condemned it as nihilistic, claiming it stripped away all hope. Adding to its darkness, the original cut ended ambiguously, leaving the dog's survival in question. Only later was a slightly more optimistic conclusion added. But the damage was done. Its reputation as one of the bleakest animated films in history remains intact. The Plague Dogs is not entertainment. It's a wound. A reminder that sometimes animation doesn't soothe, it unsettles. And for those who saw it as children, it remains an echo of sorrow that never faded. 7. Akira, 1988. When Akira premiered in Japan, it wasn't just another animated film, it was a cultural earthquake. Directed by Katsuhiro Otomo, adapted from his own sprawling manga, this cyberpunk epic redefined what animation could do. But for those who went in expecting another anime adventure, Akira was overwhelming. Brutal violence, grotesque body horror, and themes of government corruption and social collapse quickly set it apart from kid-friendly fare. Set in Neo-Tokyo, the story follows biker gangs, psychic experiments, and the destructive awakening of the unstable Tetsuo. The animation, painstakingly hand-drawn with over 160,000 cells, stunned critics with its detail. But what truly shocked audiences was its uncompromising darkness. Limbs are torn apart. Mutations spiral into nightmare imagery. Cities crumble under explosions of psychic rage. In the West, distributors struggled with how to market it. Some theaters advertised it alongside popular anime like Speed Racer or Astro Boy, only for horrified parents to drag their kids out mid-screening. Yet, Akira built a cult following, igniting the global anime boom of the 1990s. Its influence can be seen in everything from The Matrix to Stranger Things. Behind the chaos was a deeper warning about unchecked power, military secrecy, and the fragility of society. Akira wasn't just animation, it was prophecy dressed in neon and blood. For children, it was trauma. For adults, it was revelation. Its legacy remains one of the strangest paradoxes in animation, both a nightmare and a masterpiece. 8. Felidae, 1994. A murder mystery starring cats. That's how Felidae was pitched, but the reality was far darker. This German animated film, based on Akif Pirinci's novel, follows a house cat named Francis, who discovers a series of gruesome feline murders. What begins as a detective story quickly descends into scenes of cult rituals, genetic experiments, and brutal killings. The animation style is deceptively soft, almost Disney-like in moments. But then corpses appear, throats slashed, blood-soaking alleyways. One infamous scene depicts a graphic feline autopsy, leaving audiences shaken. Many who rented the VHS, expecting a light-hearted animal adventure, were stunned by the brutality. Behind the scenes, the production was ambitious. German studios poured money into detailed, hand-drawn sequences, creating a moody noir atmosphere. Yet, its release was plagued by confusion. Too violent for children, too bizarre for mainstream adults. It never reached wide audiences in the US, but among European viewers, it became a whispered legend. Critics were split. Some praised its willingness to tackle adult themes like eugenics and religious fanaticism. Others dismissed it as tasteless cruelty hiding behind talking animals. Either way, Felidae carved out a reputation as one of the strangest and most disturbing animated features ever produced. In the end, Felidae is proof that appearances deceive. Beneath its whiskers and purrs lies a nightmare. It's a film that asks, what if innocence was just a mask for horror? 9. A Scanner. Darkly, 2006. Richard Linklater's A Scanner. Darkly blurred not just the line between animation and reality, but also sanity and paranoia. Adapted from Philip K. Dick's novel, the film used a technique called rotoscoping, in which live-action footage was traced over with surreal, shifting animation. The result was hypnotic. Faces melted, colors bled, and reality itself seemed unstable. The story, set in a near future plagued by drug addiction and surveillance, follows undercover agent Bob Arctor as he loses himself in his own double identity. With Keanu Reeves, Robert Downey Jr., and Winona Ryder lending voices to their animated counterparts, the movie carried Hollywood weight. But its subject matter was anything but mainstream. Instead of cartoon whimsy, audiences faced bleak depictions of drug psychosis, paranoia, and betrayal. Scenes of addiction spirals were too harrowing for family viewing. Some viewers walked away praising its brilliance. Others left disoriented, unsure what they'd even watched. Behind the production, Linklater battled skepticism. Studios doubted whether audiences would accept the jittery, dreamlike rotoscope style. Yet, that same style became the film's weapon. It visually captured the novel's descent into fractured identity. Today, A Scanner darkly remains a cult film, admired for its innovation and courage. It isn't animation for children, it's animation as mirror, reflecting society's paranoia back at us. Watching it feels less like entertainment and more like stepping into a hallucination you're not sure you'll escape. 10. Pink Floyd, The Wall, 1982. Not every animated film is meant to comfort. Some are designed to disturb. Pink Floyd, The Wall is a fever dream of music and imagery, blending live action with grotesque animation by Gerald Scarfe. Originally crafted as a visual companion to Pink Floyd's legendary album, the film was never meant for children, and it shows. At its core, it's the story of Pink, a rock star spiraling into isolation, madness, and fascist fantasy. The animated sequences are unforgettable, marching hammers crushing all individuality, faceless children funneled into meat grinders, and grotesque caricatures of authority figures looming over fragile minds. These weren't metaphors to be unpacked gently. They were brutal symbols of trauma, war, and alienation. The production itself was as chaotic as its imagery. Roger Waters of Pink Floyd clashed with director Alan Parker, creating tension that spilled onto the screen. Yet, Gerald Scarfe's disturbing animations became the film's beating heart, etching nightmares into cultural memory. Critics were divided. Some hailed it as visionary, while others dismissed it as indulgent madness. For young viewers, the imagery was terrifying. For adults, it was cathartic, giving shape to the unspoken fears of a generation scarred by war, authority, and disillusionment. Today, The Wall is remembered not as a traditional film, but as an assault on the senses. A reminder that animation can be as confrontational as any art form. 11. Persepolis, 2007. Marjane Satrapi's Persepolis isn't grotesque like Fritz the Cat, or violent like Watership Down. Instead, its darkness lies in truth. Told through stark black and white animation, it recounts Satrapi's own coming of age during and after the Iranian Revolution. On the surface, the style looks simple, even innocent, but the emotions it carries are anything but childlike. Audiences expecting a gentle memoir were stunned by its raw honesty. It depicts war, repression, exile, and the struggle of identity with unflinching clarity. One moment, we see a young girl watching cartoons. The next, we see her grappling with executions, bombings, and the suffocating control of fundamentalism. For many viewers, it was their first exposure to Iranian history, told from a personal, human angle. Behind the scenes, Satrapi insisted the story remain animated, believing the stark, minimalist style would highlight universal humanity. She was right. The abstraction didn't soften the pain, it sharpened it, making each scene more haunting. The film went on to win the jury prize at Cannes and received international acclaim, though in some countries it faced censorship for its political boldness. For children, it was incomprehensible. For adults, it was unforgettable. Persepolis proved that animation could be memoir, protest, and poetry all at once. Its legacy endures as one of the most important adult-oriented animated films ever made, a story where simplicity of form reveals the weight of truth. 12. Mary and Max, 2009. Claymation often conjures images of whimsical worlds, but Adam Elliott's Mary and Max turned that expectation upside down. Told with stop-motion figures, it explores the unlikely friendship between Mary, a lonely girl in Australia, and Max, a middle-aged man in New York living with Asperger's syndrome. What begins as an innocent pen-pal correspondence soon unfolds into a bittersweet meditation on mental illness, isolation, and human connection. Audiences expecting Wallace and Gromit-style cheerfulness were shocked by the film's melancholy. Its muted color palette, sepia tones for Mary, grays for Max, set a somber mood. Themes of bullying, suicide, alcoholism, and depression seeped into every corner of the story. While children may have been drawn in by the clay animation, most quickly realized it was not for them. The production, spanning 5 years, was painstaking. Elliot and his small team crafted thousands of miniatures and sets, each infused with haunting detail. The narration, performed by Barry Humphries, and the voices of Toni Collette and Philip Seymour Hoffman added gravitas that elevated the film into something more than animation. It became literature brought to life. Critics praised it as brave and beautiful, but its emotional weight made it difficult for some audiences. Watching Mary and Max is less like viewing a film and more like reading a diary filled with pain and longing. It is poignant, unforgettable, and proof that clay can carry the weight of human sorrow. 13. Waltz with Bashir, 2008. Few films blur the lines between memory, dream, and history like Ari Folman's Waltz with Bashir. At first glance, it's a documentary, an Israeli filmmaker confronting his suppressed memories of the 1982 Lebanon War. But rather than live action, Folman chose animation, using surreal imagery to explore trauma, guilt, and the unreliability of memory itself. The result is unlike anything audiences had ever seen. Soldiers drift through hallucinatory battlefields. Dogs howl in repeated nightmares. Entire cities glow in dreamlike hues of orange and blue. And then, in its shattering finale, the animation dissolves into real archival footage of the Sabra and Shatila massacre, forcing viewers to confront atrocity directly. Critics hailed it as groundbreaking, calling it one of the greatest uses of animation in film history. But for parents who brought in curious teenagers, hoping for something artsy, the result was devastating. This was not an animated storybook. It was war testimony in animated form. Behind the scenes, Folman wrestled with his own conscience. Could animation do justice to reality's horror? The answer was yes. The abstraction allowed audiences to enter his fractured memories, while the sudden cut to reality left them breathless. Waltz with Bashir wasn't entertainment, it was catharsis, and a reminder that animation can be the sharpest tool for truth. 14. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. On paper, Studio Ghibli is often associated with whimsical beauty, films like My Neighbor Totoro or Kiki's Delivery Service. But Isao Takahata's Grave of the Fireflies is anything but whimsical. This Japanese masterpiece follows two siblings, Seita and Setsuko, struggling to survive in wartime Japan after their city is firebombed. At first glance, the soft animation style lulls viewers into thinking this is a gentle family tale. But as the story unfolds, hunger, despair, and death creep in. One unforgettable scene shows little Setsuko hallucinating, offering stones as if they were rice balls. For children, the imagery is unbearable. For adults, it's devastating. The film's production was deeply personal. Takahata himself survived air raids during World War II, and he poured his trauma into every frame. Animators carefully studied the smallest details of wartime Japan: rice shortages, bomb shelters, the emptiness of a home abandoned by war. The result was haunting realism cloaked in watercolor. Critics praised it as one of the most powerful anti-war films ever made. Yet, many viewers admitted they could never watch it twice. Unlike typical animated tragedies, there is no happy ending here, no catharsis, only silence and grief. Grave of the Fireflies remains proof that animation can break hearts more completely than live action ever could. 15. Anomalisa, 2015. At the very top of this list is a film that proves animation can be more human and more unsettling than reality itself. Charlie Kaufman's Anomalisa, co-directed with Duke Johnson, is a stop-motion drama unlike any other. Far from whimsical, it's a brutally intimate story about loneliness, identity, and the desperate search for connection. The film follows Michael Stone, a middle-aged customer service expert who perceives everyone around him as having the same face and voice, until he meets Lisa, a woman who finally seems unique. Using puppets, Kaufman delves into themes of alienation, routine, and fragile intimacy. What unsettled audiences wasn't violence or grotesque imagery. It was how uncomfortably real it felt. The stop-motion style amplified the unease. Characters moved with the tiny imperfections of puppetry, yet their emotions felt rawer than flesh-and-blood performances. Critics praised it as genius, though many admitted they left theaters shaken. The film even features one of the most realistic, awkwardly human love scenes ever animated, a moment that blurred the line between puppet and person. Behind the production, Kaufman struggled with funding, turning to Kickstarter to bring his vision to life. The result was an Oscar-nominated masterpiece that redefined animation's boundaries. For kids, it was incomprehensible. For adults, it was haunting. An animated film that didn't comfort, but confronted. In the end, Anomalisa proved that animation can strip us bare, showing us not fantasy, but the uncomfortable truth of what it means to be human. Animation has never been just for children. It's a mirror reflecting our fears, traumas, and truths. From surreal nightmares to heartbreaking war stories, these films remind us that cartoons can cut deeper than reality. Which one disturbed you the most? Let us know, and don't forget to like and subscribe.